fairness that you've demonstrated over the past 3 years as the issue has been discussed. A lot of times in government, the two-way conversation means the people who want the tax dollars discussing it with the elected officials who have the tax dollars, and a lot of times the other points of view get lost in the process. So I know Coast and quite a lot of other groups are appreciative of the commissioners over the past several years and the open minds that you've demonstrated on many issues. As I said, I'm representing Coast. We believe that the $315 million sales tax increase that was presented 2 weeks ago is unfair to county residents and businesses, and that the overall plan exposes the county to unacceptable financial risk. Coast does not oppose eventually sending a responsible plan to the voters. We have been at the forefront of giving citizens the right to vote on major issues. It is petition drives that we led or supported that gave citizens the right to vote on diverse issues such as a countywide sales tax increase, transit tax or some transit issues, the trash tax, the sale of waterworks, and red light cameras. If your goal is to eventually send an arts tax proposal to the voters, we want to be sure it is a fair and responsible one. There are many ways that the proposal you recently heard can be made better, and we'll get into that later. The current plan, however, contains too many flaws to advance further. These buildings are owned by the city of Cincinnati. They should be taking the primary responsibility to fix them. Cincinnati ought to care enough about their own museums to make a significant contribution and lead an effort to secure the rest of the financing that might be necessary. The plan presented to you 2 weeks ago would raise $315 million from Hamilton County and only $10 million from Cincinnati. In other words, we are being asked to spend $31 for every $1 that the building owner would contribute to their own projects. Governments make choices on how to spend their limited resources. Cincinnati chose to spend approximately $100 million of their own funds to build a streetcar instead of take care of their buildings. If Cincinnati wants to squander their money on a streetcar rather than renovate their museums, that's their choice, but Hamilton County residents shouldn't have to pay higher taxes because of it. Governments have to set priorities. Hamilton County has done this. Cincinnati hasn't. Now, when you're presented with a task force of business leaders and they tell us we need a big tax increase for 2 structures, and a former CEO tells us to sink a lot of money into a museum, doesn't necessarily mean that their plan is the best or only move. I could list 3 solid examples of this, and they're all sitting on the riverfront. We're only a month before the deadline to put something on the ballot, and there are a lot of unanswered questions. The documents presented 2 weeks ago were more of an outline rather than a plan. For 7 months of work and thousands of work hours, I had expected to see a detailed report. One issue that definitely should have been in that proposal is resolution over ownership of the buildings, particularly Union Terminal, where there are already existing complications in determining ownership. I did hear the comment that they're owned by the community, and while that's a nice cliche, that's not a serious resolution to the issue. An assumption that was made in the proposal is that Union Terminal will be able to operate in balance, but when asked how, no plan was presented. We were told that they would have to increase revenues. If something is going on the ballot with the assumption that the terminal will operate in balance, there should be a clear plan demonstrating how that will happen. One potential problem that should concern all of us is whether a responsible bidder or something similar could get introduced into the project. We were able to win this issue at MSD because we own the MSD system. But the city of Cincinnati owns these 2 buildings. I hope we've looked at whether we are bulletproof from an unwelcome development like irresponsible bidder driving up project costs. Before putting something on the ballot, it's important to independently vet all the numbers that you've been presented. Can that be done in the next month? It's not enough to rely on the numbers given to you by one side or the other just because they claim that the numbers are good. That has historically not worked out very well for this region. I've sat through a number of commission meetings where you've been presented one project cost, but after you and your experts reviewed it, you found that the project could be done for a lot less. One number specifically that worries me is the year 1 projected sales tax revenue. While estimating a 0% growth rate is definitely better than what we've previously seen, if a recession hits in the next 2 or 3 years, this won't be bringing in $35 million a year, and it could take the majority of the life of the sales tax to recover to that point. Then we would have 2 sales tax fund shortfalls when one has been far too many. As I noted before, Coast does not oppose eventually putting something on the ballot. And in fact, a number of people I've spoken to who don't support the current plan do support some role for the county. in renovating one or both of these projects, and to me it's very important that those views be represented as well. So what we've come up with are 7 different items that we would like to see in anything that does go before the ballot. And I promise this is my one and only handout. Three for you guys down there. Number 1 is remove Music Hall from the proposal. In recent years, there were 2 proposals presented for a terminal-only tax increase. Both times you've made it clear that they need to come back with a lower request of county taxpayers. But instead of cutting costs, they've come back with an additional building. A coherent argument can definitely be made for some county role to rehab Union Terminal. The county initially remade that building into a museum space. We've passed 2 levies to support them, and a prior agreement actually assigns us ownership of items that we've repaired over there. However, no such relationship exists with Music Hall. The city owns it and we're not involved. That Music Hall project needs to be removed from consideration, and when it is, we've cut 37% of the current plan's cost, and we're back down to a more manageable project. Number 2, have an outside group take ownership and be responsible for the Union Terminal project. This comes right from page 2 of the Tax Levy Review Committee's November 2013 report. In addition to their reasons for recommending this, the most important reason, in my opinion, behind the move is that it protects Hamilton County's finances. By having someone else run the project, that group would be responsible for cost overruns and we wouldn't be exposed. We know that county's finances are very tight and we can't afford further disruptions. Number 3, make it a set, defined contribution from the county. We would tell them, here is our contribution along with our best wishes. We don't worry about anything beyond that. So items number 2 and 3 right there, it essentially just turn us into one of the donors. We tell them what the contribution is, and that's it. Number 4, we must demand a significant contribution from the city of Cincinnati. The owner should take better responsibility for their assets. If Cincinnati can spend $100 million of their money on a streetcar, then they can spend $100 million taking care of their museums. We need to continue pushing for more private contributions from the museum backers in the wealth community, which I define as wealthy individuals and large corporations. The $40 million pledge is only 12% of the combined project's cost. We should demand greater balance. And I'll note what I find interesting is it's the wealthy people who are telling me this, not the people who are less wealthy. 6, a long-term user fee. And I know we greatly appreciate that Todd Fortune, Commissioner Fortune, raised this issue last week. Those who use the building should help pay for it. If public dollars are going to be requested, then the first in should come from those who actually use the building. It's a basic issue of fairness. Around 60% of museum center visitors are from outside the county. The current plan would be an inequitable situation where the majority of visitors pay nothing to renovate the building they are using, while Hamilton County taxpayers shoulder most of the burden through a regressive tax. A user fee fixes that. We've heard the argument that implementing a user fee is bad because they would have to raise their prices and it would cut sales. But their solution is to implement a sales tax increase which raises everybody's prices. It raises taxes on a renter on the verge of being evicted. It takes money from the owner of a $90,000 home who is 2 months away from foreclosure. It is preposterous to claim that a $5 or $3 user fee is unworkable, but a sales tax increase that costs every man, woman, and child an average of $23 per year is somehow not a problem. And those last 3 suggestions are about getting the owners, the users, and the wealthy backers to pay their fair share before we look for taxpayer subsidies. And finally, number 7 is kind of the miscellaneous category. Ensure we have fully pursued options such as federal and state grants, historical tax credits, assistance from historical societies, and any other potential source of revenue. I guess I could have included naming rights in there too. In particular, we would like to see the county independently check the $46 million of historical tax credits that were claimed 2 weeks ago. They said they were confident in that number, but we've been down that road before. And then to put a wrap to it, the immediate decision is whether to advance a proposal to the November ballot. If there is going to be any kind of arts tax on the ballot, our suggested improvements are needed for it to be a responsible proposal that protects the county's finances. I'd be surprised, though, if there was enough time to implement or finalize any of these proposed items before the August deadline, never mind all of them. Imagine how much better the stadiums would have been for Hamilton County if these type of provisions were included in the stadium plan. Whether people agree or disagree with taxpayer-funded stadiums, a well-thought-out plan would have been a lot better for us than the existing albatross that will continue hurting our county's finances for another 20 years. And whether people agree or disagree that Hamilton County should subsidize one or two museums owned by the city of Cincinnati, there is no doubt that a responsible plan is far better than a deeply flawed one that expects county taxpayers to shoulder most of the burden. If the plan on the table is implemented, this could easily become Hamilton County's third and fourth stadiums. We can't let emotional feelings lead us into any more bad financial deals. Before anything goes to the ballot, we need to demand that the owner, the wealthy backers, and the users contribute their fair share before we take money involuntarily from the taxpayers. We need the numbers vetted by independent sources who report to the commission, and we need a plan, not an outline, that shows us from A to Z how this project will be a success. For all the reasons previously cited, we urge you to reject the plan/outline proposed 2 weeks ago. If you want to eventually put something different on the ballot, we encourage you to utilize the proposals that we've given. Previously, the commission has stated that county tax dollars should be the last ones in. If you put a good plan together and get a fair share contribution from the owners, backers, and users, but still need a little bit of money from the taxpayers to close the deal, that's something we could live with. At least then we would know that you've minimized the burden on taxpayers and produced a plan that would likely become an asset for the community and not another stadium fiasco.